Going on this computer. Okay, so we're just gonna go over some like podcast kind of outlining and interviewing, and even though these like a lot of these are for like podcasts, I thought for like this idea of a Zoom format type of talk show or diary kind of show, I thought some of these like the podcast resources are pretty close to like how to plan for something like that, even though it's has that aspect of like being on camera. So I just kind of collected a few things and to kind of give you more of an idea of like what I was talking about in terms of pre-planning for that kind of project. And then a couple like resources on how to think about interviewing. I did look for some for like directors of color, like talking about interviewing, and I didn't really find much, which sucks, but I there's a pretty good article that I saw from a woman named Terry Gross. She's like a radio interviewer. She's kind of a renowned interviewer. And I thought that her advice on interviewing and also just like conversation in general was pretty solid as far as like how to make an off-the-cuff conversation interesting. So I included that, and I just wanted to kind of go over that.
That's not really my goal though, to make it interesting. I'm more just giving commentary, I guess. Not really commentary, but just, bringing awareness. And I guess afterwards, if people had questions about something, then I'd answer. But that's how I kind of saw myself doing it. I was really speaking, and then I guess if people had questions afterwards.
Well, I mean, and this may change, but I think from what I understood, at least from when you and Zen were talking about it initially, it was like, oh, maybe it'll be you two and then interviewing other people or like a panel discussion. But it seems like for you to have evolved into more of like a diary or like a, and this is one thing that like.
I know, well, I don't know. Well, in panel, don't they kind of like debate right issues?
I mean, there's panel discussions and then there's like debates. There's like, and that's like your kind of, that would be your choice as the moderator of something like that. If you want to have a combative discussion, you can lead it there. But if you want, in both how you press people or how you program what kind of people are on your panel, like if you have people that are going to disagree with each other passionately, so that's just part of that production and that programming.
Could we have both? Like maybe the first we'll get out what we have to say, speak our truth, and then afterwards we can come back later and do that part. Like could that be like a second round or like maybe a second part or something?
Yeah, I mean, we can do whatever makes the most sense. I was talking to Zen about it as well, and it's like, at least from you, what I've been hearing is that maybe initially it was like, oh yeah, we could have a discussion, but it sounds like at first, like you said, you want to do more of a this is what I have to say type of thing. And so for that, I actually have a different thing to go over. So I didn't think this article was like necessarily like, I mean, it's pretty basic as far as like how to outline a script for a podcast. It's like, oh, you have an opening or if you have a sponsor message and introduction, you have a jingle, just like an overview of what's in store. And then for you, like, if we're talking about like, you want to talk about Black on Black crime, it's like, that's your first topic. What's your main point, your supporting point, your data and your research, all that kind of stuff. And then you know, your transition or your segue into whatever your second topic might be. You know, another sponsor break, but we don't really have sponsors.
Yeah.
I was just saying Covenant House and HBO, which is we are of course thankful for Covenant House and HBO. You know, and then
could you send that to me?
Yeah, after class I'll send all these links out.
Okay.
But the thing that I thought was most interesting about, you know, I mean, that's a pretty basic outline, you know, that's simple to follow. But what I thought was good about this article, so there's way at the bottom, there's this like types of podcasts with templates. So solo show podcasts, you know, so I think that seems to be what you're thinking more like for this. And you know, I mean, I think we're talking about something that's maybe a podcast, or maybe more of a like a I don't even know if people still use this word, but like a vodcast, like a you know, like a YouTube show, right, where you set up your little area and it's you, like Joe Rogan or a lot of those kind of comedians.
Just those YouTube people who comment on things, you know, I know I follow someone on YouTube who does that.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. Or, you know, like Zen was talking about Adi and these two guys, I forget what their names were. But yeah, you know, where you can have a really simple setup, you know, maybe it's just you against a backdrop and like a light or something like that. But yeah, so that's kind of, this is more of the template then for you. You know, it's like solo show podcast. If you host a podcast by yourself, it helps to prepare at least a basic outline before you start recording. And I mean, I think that'll be helpful for you, right? So, you know, like you see, okay, what are the, hey Zen, oh, sorry, just so you know, you can hear me now. Hi, I started recording this one today, so just FYI, if you don't want to be on camera, I'm recording. If you don't care, then continue on. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
So
cool. We kind of just started just going over the podcast stuff. Before you came, we were mostly talking about TV screenwriting formats and a few examples of that, and asked Amy some questions for her. So now we're at, because Aisha's kind of talking about more like maybe doing something that's, and I think I had mentioned this to you as well, where she was like, I think I just want to do something, especially like for the first episode, of just like outlining something for her to just talk about how she feels about, and I haven't seen an outline, but I just know from talking to you, right, it's like mostly dealing with like Black on Black crime and like what your experience has been. Is there kind of anything else at that point?
for me?
No, for Aisha.
Oh, okay. Oh, hi, Aisha.
No, not. Oh, hello.
I didn't know who was here.
Oh, sorry.
It's just us three
right now.
Yeah, so that sounds like a good idea. Like I was telling you before, I was thinking about just like kind of recording it on my own first, just to see, you know, how it sounds, how it goes, and maybe that would be a good idea to just, you know, first us just speaking and talking about what we want to talk about, and then coming together after that. Like if there's questions afterwards, recording those questions and answering those, or like you said, panel talk or something.
Yeah, because I was, and then we'll kind of go into this after, because I was telling Aisha that, you know, I had pulled together just a few resources as far as like outlines and how to organize and think about your show. Or like, I mean, and I found the things that seemed most relevant to this type of Zoom format to be like podcasts. But obviously we're not just talking like audio, we're talking video as well. So it's like, you know, once we get closer to actually recording, we would kind of like probably do a run through of like, you know, what your space and what your background and all that kind of stuff looks like. And, you know, I could kind of help you out like in terms of, you know, making something maybe more beautiful than this. Like, honestly, when I do calls or something like that, this is not the area that I use because it's just that my big computer, my edit machine is this one. So I guess when I'm not editing, I don't have to use the interface. But this is just like in my mind, the digital Dove place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, we were just going over, I have this, and I'll send all these links out to everybody after class, but I was saying that this, and I'm sorry, I really think that pregnancy brain thing is starting to work, like take a hold. I don't like to like lean on that, but I definitely am like,
I was gonna ask you about that today.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know, I just felt the urge to ask you about it.
Oh, if I felt it was real or not, or like, what was your question?
No, just like how you feel.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've been feeling on the whole pretty good, but yeah, I definitely have been starting to feel like the gears turning at sometimes, and it's frustrating because I'm like, I should be able to think faster than this.
I've always been curious about it. I've never really been around a woman like constantly while she was pregnant, so I've always, you know.
Yeah.
Curious.
I'm an open book, so if you have questions. But yeah, I kind of thought it was like always one of those like, I'm a little like skeptical of it because I'm like, oh, that's just like some more sexist stuff. But
it makes sense because like your body is like working like to make a baby. So it's like,
yeah, totally. And I mean, I haven't fully researched. I don't have all the time in the world to really go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, I've researched a little bit. People are like, nope, it's kind of pretty real. And I mean, from my experience, I definitely, yeah, I'm like, oh, what? How come I can't grasp what I'm saying?
yeah.
But it's okay. It's temporary.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what I was struggling to say before was that I had, this Castos podcast script article. I was like, it's not that great. I mean, it's a pretty basic outline here at the beginning, which is cool. It's like, introduction, blah, 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 your topic, main point, supporting point, which is cool. But I think what's most kind of interesting in this article, I mean, there's some basic stuff, especially, and since Aisha's not talking about doing it like an interview-based show, some of this doesn't apply. But it just talks a little bit about how to set up a format for a show. Like maybe you have segments that you have in every episode of your show. Like you might go to like, this week in pop culture or something, or like
yeah. And
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, you had what was your suggestion for me last time? Weren't you telling me about, was it Action Bronson show, or was that suggestion for Casey?
That was more of a suggestion for Casey, but for you, it was more like Desus and Mero.
That's what, I never heard of it. How do you spell it?
It's DESUS and MERO. They started out as a podcast called the Bodega Boys, which I actually wasn't that much of a fan of. But then they got a Vice show, and then from Vice they went to Showtime. And it's basically just them like sitting on a couch, and then like the first section of their show is like them just reviewing clips like pop culture clips and then making like commentary on it. You know, and they're like it's one guy is a Dominican dude and one guy is Jamaican dude. They're both from the Bronx, and so like they just like, you know, are very much through that lens of who they are and where they're from, commenting on all these things. Sometimes problematic, just sometimes really like fun, like stupid, funny stuff. Like
Yeah.
they'll comment on like, I think it was like a cow or something that was like loose on the BQE or something like that. Or like, you know, it could be somebody like saying something really racist or whatever. And then the next section is like a long form interview where they'll bring somebody on and just talk to them. And they're just both really funny, hilarious guys. And so it's cool to like, yeah, they do this like pop culture kind of commentary section with like a political, social, you know, social commentary, social justice kind of bent. And then they'll interview like a celebrity or something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, and that's basically their format, you know. Oh, and then at the end they do this cute thing. Well, at least in their Vice show, it used to be like, they would say like, what would your rainbow say? And then like they just get kind of like a slogan from the guest and then put it up on a rainbow above their head. Now that they're on their Showtime show, like what would your neon sign say? So it's the same thing, but I guess they can't use the rainbow. I don't know.
I like it.
But yeah, it's a really like simple, cute format. But like I think for you, like we were saying, and I know that you're always kind of like watching stuff. And like I think it's perfect like, when you were talking about that, like the Charlemagne and Joe Biden interview. You know, it'd be great to like for you to play a clip and talk about it. Yeah. So that could definitely be part of something you do.
For sure. I wrote it down.
Cool. And then, so yeah, this is all whatever. And then what I thought was the most interesting about this podcast script article is like types of podcast scripts with templates, which is nice. And so, yeah, I was just kind of going over this solo show version with Aisha. Cause yeah, like, and this seems like it would be a good outline for you, Aisha. Cause then, you know, you can have whatever your show is called. And then when it comes closer time, we can also like look through since we have use of the HBO, like some of their, what do you call, stock music libraries or their like libraries, we can kind of like, we can look through and pick some theme songs or some sound effects and that kind of stuff for your shows.
Yay.
You know, and yeah, we can just think about like a little bit of graphics and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like that's after we get really like we get some solid like outlines. So, you know, for you, Aisha, like I said, you can think of whatever the title for your podcast will be, or your you know YouTube Zoom show will be, and then you can kind of follow this format where like maybe in your first episode you address like Black on Black crime, and then you can kind of like subplot that out, like, you know, because your thing is right, like that it's kind of like not discussed, you know, and then you can kind of like say why you think that is. You know, it's like, well, based on my experience, like this is all I've ever seen, and then maybe like look up some like supporting facts and things like, you know, where I grew up in, because you're from Inglewood. Well, you're all from all over that kind of south area, right? Yeah, you know, we could like work on, you know, the number, because a little bit you're saying like, oh, people are talking about like police violence, and how it's way over, in your opinion, like way over reported versus like Black on Black crime, and you could say like, hey, you know, incidents of this kind of thing versus this kind of thing are whatever proportion. You know, we can look into stuff like that. But yeah, we should make a little outline of that. So yeah, I'll send this link out and you can check this out. Then yeah, there's these other kind of like formats, you know, that we've all kind of discussed and thrown around, but I think it's a good thing to see them kind of like in black and white, like what are these different formats and how do they differ? You know, the second one is that interview show podcast, which, you know, it could be one interviewer and one guest, or it could be multiple interviewers or hosts and, you know, one or more guests. But I think this particular outline is for more of just like a one-on-one type show, which, you know, this is a good outline of how to do that, you know, and this is a decent, I wanted to, I'll go into probably like the Terry Gross, like how to interview, because she has a lot of really good tips and I think an interesting frame on it. But I mean, these are like the basics of like kind of what to ask, what not to ask. Yeah. So I'll send this one too. I don't think I actually have this one on my list. That's good. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. So, and then this other like template that they use is the co-host podcast. And I think in this instance, they're really talking more about more of a storytelling type of podcast. I mean, there's one that I think of that I listen to kind of to go to sleep, but it's also fairly interesting, but it's called Missed History. And it's like, kind of like highlights stories of women and like people of color in history that, like, you know, have kind of been like left out of the history books. And there's 2 women that host it. And I know that they very tightly like script their episodes. So I think this is the, you know, where they might be talking about, I don't know what, I guess one that I listened to recently was about this person called the Universal Friend. But, you know, they might say like the Universal Friend, like grew up in, or was born in Virginia or wherever they were born. And then, you know, or they might have like bullet points of like, you're going to talk about their years, you know, their early life and, you know, what it was like growing up in this type of household. And then you're going to talk about like when they had their, you know, issues with the church. You're going to talk about their disease and how they became like, you know, inhabited by a spirit, all that kind of stuff. So whatever those bullet points are, but like in this example, they're pretty tightly scripted, which, you know, that's kind of up to you and how tightly you want to actually do this. This actually looks like they've probably already recorded it, and it's more of a transcript, but yeah, that's, if you guys made a script or outline like this, I would be like, blessings. I'd be like, yes, you are the best ever. You're ready to just take off and be a professional.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so that's kind of that. And then obviously, yeah, preparation is key, is so true. Even though, like, if you're doing something that's very improv, I think knowing where you're going, and even if you're working with like a co-host or something like that, like I think Jesus and Mira, like they definitely have a rehearsal and they do it once and they kind of like know a little bit what jokes they're gonna make, or I mean, sometimes their producer will like throw up a clip maybe that they've never seen and it's more off the cuff. But it's like there's like a lot of preparation that goes into something that makes it actually seem like, oh, this is just off the cuff.
Yeah.
And that's like a special talent. So, yeah, I mean, and I don't know, Zen, are you interested at all in interviewing? I don't know if Zen's still there.
This person on,
Huh?
what were you saying?
Oh, yeah, because I think as far as, well, I guess let me just ask you then, are you kind of thinking that like solo format, talking about like reacting clips or like things that you've seen online, like does that feel like a pretty comfortable kind of format for you? Are you interested at all in doing like something like, even if it's just a segment like interview based?
I really like the commentary one. It feels like comfortable or fitting for me. Like I wouldn't mind interviewing people as well, or unless you're asking like about it like on a separately.
I mean, I think it could be a segment of a larger show. I agree. I think it seems like that, maybe starting initially with that format of just like commentary and reacting to like clips and that kind of thing seems like, I mean, you're saying it seems comfortable and natural, and like just from like when I talk to you, like I think that would be like a really cool type of format for you. But I was just curious because I know that we had kind of tossed around the idea of maybe interviewing. So that's why, and like a lot of these types of shows are interview based. So that's kind of why I'm just bringing it up. But I did want to kind of just gauge both you and Aisha's interest in interviewing. So.
Like I said, like I think that would be a good idea, like a second phase thing. Like first we both speak out, like I speak, and then she puts out her own video what she wants to say, and then after that, doing maybe having that next.
Okay.
Like us getting out what we have to say, what we've been holding in, and then after that, questions. We can do a second part of questions being asked.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well then I'll just kind of like go over this and like show you some interview, just to kind of get it in, get some of these ideas like circulating in your brain. And I was telling Aisha before, I tried to look up some like, advice from like documentary directors of color and stuff like that, but I actually couldn't find very much stuff. But Terry Gross is a really good interviewer, and this article that I had seen before, it just came to my mind. Oh dang, I don't have my New York Times subscription on this. Let me move it to here. Can you see if they're over here on this window?
I don't think so. We're still on the gross.
Still on that article thing.
Okay. But it's, hold on, let me see, because I have a New York Times subscription on this account, but not on this account. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Can you see like this? It's fair to say Terry Gross knows some things.
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. Wait, what do I do? I think I need to stop there. And then there.
But you pay for that?
I do.
I mean, people get paper form, or you can get it digitally.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be that you can like do that incognito thing, but I mean, I don't know. I'm like, I think the New York Times is good, and they need some money, so there you go. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, I get it.
Hmm?
I was just saying, like, I get it.
Yeah. So this article I thought was like, and she has a lot of really good advice. She's been interviewing people for like 35 plus years or something. She started in the 70s, so oh my gosh, that's like 50 years of interviewing people. Like, she knows some things, so respect. Very gross. And when I heard this, because I think initially I had heard a like radio version of this article. I totally agree with this. Like, you know, tell me about yourself. That's like a great way. That's a great way to start an interview. Or like a conversation, you know, because it can, especially like, I mean, I'm sure that you have both encountered it in Los Angeles, or even, I think it's an American thing to be like, so tell me what you do, or like, what do you do for work? Like, I feel like that's often a place that people start conversations, but it's like focusing only on one aspect of someone, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a part of somebody that they don't necessarily, you know, maybe they're tired about
Want to share, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it may not be the most interesting part of someone. So like, I think just in general, like the question is a really good example of a really beautiful, broad, open question. It's like, tell me about yourself. It can be anything, right? Like if somebody's like in a mode of like wanting to talk about work or network or whatever, like they can tell you about their work. But if they like are like, oh, my work isn't interesting, or, you know, like I don't feel like talking about that right now, we're gonna talk about anything. So I think just like thinking that idea of like open-ended questions that are appropriate and can like give people like room and like not make people feel uncomfortable. Like the more of those types of questions that you can just have kind of in your pocket at all times as an interviewer or as a are it's good stuff. So some of this is, and you know, this is framed a little bit in the way of like interview as a conversation. So this is like the idea, because she does like long format interviews that are conversational. So this article is like a little bit of like a, and I guess this is one thing to bring up. It's like interview. There are actually like people think interview. There are many kind of modes of an interview. You know, it can be an interview. Like often when I work and produce for television, you're really trying to interview someone for bites. You know, you're trying to get them to say what you need them to say to advance a narrative. And that's a less open-ended type of interview. You want to make sure that you're making that person feel comfortable, but you're also being mindful of what you need to tell the story. So they can't just say like, I don't know, what's a good example? Well, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. Actually, it's not really relevant to what we're talking about, but just also know that there's different styles of interview. You know, and this is like long form conversation, like a little bit more informal, cordial type, which makes for good content. That's but it really relies on the interviewer setting the tone. And in that respect, I think this idea of the conversational interview, curiosity is, you know, just a major, I think, part of being a good interviewer or a good, and also like a good producer. It's like asking a question that's like deeper, or like keeping somebody talking, and so that they kind of, because a lot of the time it's about like creating a space for somebody to talk, and because most people like talking about themselves, you know. So it's like setting up an environment or a space where people feel comfortable, like just talking. Yeah. So, you know, and I think this is good advice. You know, interviewing a person is having a conversation with them, or interviewing a person and having a conversation with them are two different things. But the common thread that can help you excel at both is being genuinely curious, like wanting to hear what the person is telling you. I can respond to what somebody is saying by expressing and feeling sympathy or empathy and explaining why. So like, that makes somebody feel heard. And then that if somebody's feeling heard, they'll want to tell you more. So yeah. Being funny if you can. Yeah, because if you're not fun to talk to, people probably won't talk to you. But, you know, but there's also, again, there's different styles of interview. You know, you can be no nonsense as well. And not to say that you can't be funny and be, what do you call? Hard hitting is not exactly what I'm trying to say, but addressing serious topics. Like, I don't know, do you guys, have you ever heard of or listened to Jonathan Van Ness?
No, I don't think so.
He's one of the new version of, oh my gosh, what's the name of that stupid, awesome show? Queer Eye on Netflix. He's the one with like the long hair. Anyway, he has a podcast, and I mean, he's a great interviewer, and he's ridiculous and silly, and like totally doesn't take himself or seemingly, you know, he's a very flippant manner, but he's incredibly prepared, which kind of goes to the next thing. You know, he definitely knows what he's talking about, but he just like doesn't speak like formally at all. So he's really, really funny, but he definitely knows his shit. So it's like, which is like an interesting combination, and it's powerful because it's, oh yeah, you might be able to, you know, some people might think, you know, oh, he's silly and you can write him off, but he's so prepared and he knows what he's talking about. So ultimately, like, to be a good interviewer, you have to know about who you're talking to and just know what to ask, which is sort of like a weird balancing act in itself, because it's like, you know, you don't want to turn into somebody who's like leading a conversation into a place that it's like already been before. Because obviously if you're able to find stuff online, you know, like that's something that's like out in the world, and kind of part of a good interview is like bringing new aspects of somebody out, or bringing something new to the conversation. But you, in that way, you do have to know what's already been said by that person, so you can try to draw something new out of them. Yeah, and you might be able to think of like, and being able to look at things that they've said and think critically, or you know, think, yeah, just be, and that goes back to being curious, right? It's like, oh, well, I saw that you, you know, spent a summer in Spain as a rodeo clown or whatever. And, you know, whatever might come up for you as far as like what might be interesting off of that. And this little section is a little bit about, you know, when things kind of start to go, if things start to go sideways in an interview, which is good to also prepare for. So what does she say here? Yeah. Interviews, two-way street can be hard to remember when your applicant who's desperately wants to land the gig, but Ms. Gross gently reminds us that as an interviewee. So this is talking about a little bit job interview, which is obviously a different kind of interview. What is expected of you being prepared? Oh, I mean, so this is just really, I mean, that is especially good to remember as like for job interviews, is like you're always in control to kind of like, and this is not a great thing to do, you know, or if you're in an interview, especially like if you're with a politician or somebody who like that, who has talking points that they want to get out, You know, sometimes you might have to try to like steer a conversation away from a subject that somebody else is trying to talk about. So, you know, it's just being prepared to pivot on things, like say, well, you know, hey, that's a really good point, but like, I'm still really curious about XYZ, you know, but thank you for bringing that up. Like little phrases like that you can always use to help turn a conversation back into where you want it to go. And then, yeah, there's always like how to dodge a question, which, you know, I think it's always pretty obvious when somebody does something like that. Like, I don't, you know, and she just suggests, you know, like, I don't want to answer that, which is beautifully honest. And somebody might say that to you in an interview, and that's, you know, I tend to just be really respectful of that. But she kind of, and I'm going to skip over this because, I mean, obviously body language, even over Zoom, is important. So, you know, but I don't know. I think that point just kind of is self-evident. It's like important to pay attention to body language and see if, you know, somebody is like over talking to you, or, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, when to push back and when not to. Ms. Gross prefers to interview artists and creators over politicians, and she approaches those baskets of interviews differently. Politicians, she believes, owe us an answer, and so in her own way, she'll keep asking and re-asking. So that's like an important thing, you know, to I guess always keep in mind, is like, why are you asking, or who is the person that you're interviewing, and like how, yeah, I guess that's just a good way to frame it. It's like, does the person owe you an answer, or is it just like, you know, they have the right to their privacy about something, or like you feel that they, yeah, I mean, it's obviously up to you where and how you draw the line, but I think that's a good way to frame that and think about it. Yeah. And then I'll just quickly go over this one. These are some basic interview questions, but I think they always bear like going over again. Or not interview questions, but documentary like tactics. You know, so you so role playing, you know, it's like thinking about like, how do you imagine your subject is going to answer a question, and thinking about like what, you know, thinking ahead about what somebody is going to respond to you with what question. Like, often when I'm outlining questions, I'll write like 3 to 5 like subtly different versions of a question that, as an interview goes on, I'll kind of like, I can pick and choose. And then also it helps to, if you like need to press somebody on an item, you can go back with like kind of like reworded versions of the same question. Like, I find that helps me anyway. So yeah, it's like thinking about like, what can this person give to you in terms of like their piece of the story, or their certain perspective on a subject, and, you know, you thinking about, as an interviewer, what are the questions that you have to ask to elicit that information from them in a new or interesting way. So that idea of role playing is kind of that. And then just curiosity, which we talked about before. And then listening, which is you know, actually this is really good. It's like, yeah, if you're interviewing and speaking in generalities, you know, ask them to be more specific. Yeah, you know, you have to be actively listening at the same time you're preparing to ask things, because that will inform how you proceed with as your interview goes along. And yeah, like maybe you're dealing with somebody who isn't used to you know, speaking visually or being really specific about their personal experiences. They might, you know, be like, hey, it was good. You know, and kind of part of your job to, when you're interviewing, is to elicit more rich and textured kind of information and responses out of someone. I totally agree with this. Oh, do you guys want to say?
I think it's me and you. I think Zen left.
Oh, okay. Do you want to head out, or I think this is just the last little bit.
Excuse me, I'll try to look over most of it. How long is this thing?
What thing?
This whole article and page?
It's much longer.
Maya, well, I'll look over. Maybe, I don't know if she wanted to go over her project still with you. Do you want to ask her that while we still have time? And I can just head out if you want to go over her stuff. You said that's what you want to do.
Well, no, that was Casey, but Casey didn't show up.
Oh, just Casey. Didn't Zen have something she was working on too?
Yeah, but we're not going to work on it in class.
Okay.
Because it's not really ready yet. It's like in a pretty raw state. So, but so Wednesday I'm going to be dropping off the lighting packages. And then, so that's what we're going to do on Wednesday, is just kind of go over them, make sure everybody can like talk over them or like knows how to use them. And then, then yeah. And so after I drop off the lighting, I'll just make sure that folks know how to set them up. That'll be about it. And then the week after that, I'll start diving more into editing Zen's piece, and then hopefully revisiting Casey's stuff too. But I don't think they actually ended up filming anything this week, which is too bad. But we will keep going.
Yeah, probably head. I'm gonna get ready too. I'm about to go out in a little bit.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm gonna stop.
How'd you get that background?
Which background?
For your Gmail thing. How'd you get that?
The black one?
For your email, yeah. The background, the little, it was like wood or something.
Oh, I don't know. They have like, I think in here they have different settings or whatever. I forget.
I'll look it up.
I did it, now I don't remember. Oh, here's an email from Casey. But yeah, okay. So I guess I mean, you don't usually come on Wednesday, right? I'm gonna stop the recording.